Professional lifestyle coaches with years of experience that are ready to help you live the life you want.
Check this out.
Get the job.
The things that they're teaching are valuable skills that everybody should know.
Get the girl.
When a man knows who he is and can communicate well, there's nothing sexier.
Live the lifestyle.
I like the results, and they came quick.
Welcome to the Art of Charm.
It's showtime.
This podcast is the official podcast of The Art of Charm, which brings together the best coaches in the industry to teach you guys how to get and keep the girl, as well as put your best foot forward in both social and business situations. Make sure to stay up to date with everything going on here and get some free stuff as well that'll help you become more charismatic and confident by signing up for the newsletter at theartofcharm.com. If you're new to the show but you want to know more about what we teach here at The Art of Charm, listen to the basic toolbox at theartofcharmpodcast.com/toolbox. That's where we have all the fundamentals of dating and attraction, body language, eye contact, vocal tonality, touch, everything that's more important than you might think. We've got boot camps running 2 to 3 times every single month here in Hollywood, California, and free intro seminars running here in LA. Details at theartofcharm.com. Looking forward to meeting all you guys in LA in 2014. Welcome to the Art of Charm podcast, the show that's more than just about getting the girl, but putting a little banana in your personal growth fruit yogurt. I'm Jordan Harbinger, live from the Art of Charm headquarters on Hollywood Boulevard, where all the magic happens at AOC boot camps and training courses. And this is the beginning of a week-long program. The guys are out tearing it up with our coaches, and we've got guys from Canada and the U.S. as usual, and a couple guys from Germany, as well as a guy from Slovenia, which is funny because today we're talking with Sam Vaknin. How do I pronounce your last name?
You did well. Vaknin.
Okay, we're talking with Sam Vaknin, and you are actually in Macedonia, which is kind of a neighbor to Slovenia, actually. Former Yugoslavia.
Well, kind of. It's like, it's about 4 or 5 hours away by airplane.
Right.
So it's not that neighborly, but yeah, in the vicinity, in the neighborhood.
Is it really that far? I mean, you used to be part of the same country, Yugoslavia.
Yes, Yugoslavia was an elongated entity.
Yeah, that's
true.
So
from one end to another, it was like 10 hours by car, 12 hours by car.
Very true. And not to date the show too much, but literally right now, half of Bosnia is on fire, or at least half of Tuzla is on fire. Probably.
Yeah, well, it's a very active neighborhood, shall we say.
Yeah, that much is for sure. It's funny because I actually visited Bosnia and Macedonia and Kosovo in the early 2000s, and everything was pretty peaceful. There was a lot of damage, but everything was fairly peaceful, and now it seems to be sort of igniting again, which is...
they go through these cycles of self-ignition, self-combustion, and then they collect the ashes. It's a very, very sad neighborhood. I call it the unconscious of the world.
Yeah, it really is, because it's something that nobody pays attention to. I mean, even when there was a crazy genocidal war and a civil war going on there, it was kind of like this evening at 11, same shit, different day in Bosnia. Also, Christmas gifts are on sale at Macy's.
Right, and it's been going on for centuries. It reminds me of my homeland. I'm an Israeli. It reminds me of the Middle East.
Yeah, you guys
to a very
have
large extent.
Another active neighborhood as well.
Another active neighborhood, yeah. The inner cities of the world.
Exactly. Yeah, the almost like the nicest ghettos around. I used to live in Jerusalem, really great place. And I mean, that was just like, I lived in East Jerusalem, and one day people knocked on our door and they were like, "Hey man, you should probably get the hell out of here and never come back because it's going to light up." And I thought, it's not going to be that bad. And then, like 20 years later or 14 years later, it's still pretty bad.
It is.
So you're the author of a book called Malignant Self-Love, Narcissism Revisited. And that title immediately interested me as well, because you've written a lot of scholarly publications. You're in hundreds of books. You've also got a website, Malignant Self-Love, Narcissism Revisited. What is that? I mean, narcissist is kind of a term that we throw around and we're like, oh, that guy, whenever anyone's arrogant, you're like, that guy's such a narcissist. But it's actually a medical condition, which most people know. And it's more serious than that, because it becomes almost like, instead of just being arrogant because you're insecure about something, it's literally you are the center of the universe for yourself. I mean, why don't you explain it? You wrote the book on it, literally.
Narcissistic personality disorder, as the name implies, is a personality disorder. So the first thing about it is that it is all-pervasive. It affects all dimensions, aspects, nooks, and crannies of the personality. It generates and engenders dysfunctions, multiple dysfunctions in romantic relationships, intimate relationships, workplace relationships, and so on and so forth. So the first thing you glean or the first thing you discern about narcissistic personality disorder is how totally destructive it is. It leaves behind a shell of a person, and it creates destruction and devastation in every aspect, not only of the narcissist's lives, but also of those around them, their ostensibly nearest and dearest, their colleagues, their neighbors, and so on. So this is the first thing. The second thing is that you're right. It's a medical condition, or at least it's a psychiatric condition, and so therefore has to be diagnosed and should be diagnosed only by qualified mental health practitioners. It's not a label to be flung about. It's not the equivalent of a jerk or an a-hole. It's much deeper than that. Narcissists, for instance, completely lack empathy. They are unable to put themselves in other people's shoes and to sympathize and identify with their needs, priorities, emotions, preferences. They are highly exploitative. They are not arrogant in the sense not only in the sense that they believe themselves to be superior to others, but in the sense that they believe, exactly as you have said, that they are the center of the world, that they have a sense of entitlement. They feel entitled to special treatment, to constant attention, to their faults and handicaps being overlooked. Actually, they do not admit to having any faults, handicap, shortcoming, and so on. So they are perfect. They are brilliant. They live in a fantasy world. Their perception of themselves is grandiose to the point of being divine, godlike. So we are not talking about someone who is merely arrogant, but someone who believes himself to be deserving of everything that everyone has to give on a priority basis. These people are very demanding. They are exacting. They are, you can say colloquially, that they are energy vampires. They suck the lifeblood out of everyone around them. And they are insistent, they are persistent, they are aggressive, and sometimes they're violent. Many of them also have antisocial or psychopathic traits. In other words, they tend to be criminalized. They tend to have criminal behavior. They reject society's mores and laws. They are law unto themselves. They decide what's right and wrong. They decide how things should be done. Prior experience of other people is utterly irrelevant because the narcissist is convinced that he is omniscient, he knows everything, and omnipotent. He is capable of everything. So this is really not about someone who is, haughty but it's about detachment from reality. It's a massive, massive delusion. It's a massive fantasy world which a narcissist inhabits and which he tries to impose willy-nilly on everyone around him.
That makes a lot of sense. I actually know a guy who recently just went off the deep end. He was always an arrogant, kind of jerky, self-centered guy. And he actually stole some things from me, which is really sad because we used to be close friends. But I heard recently, of course I cut off contact with him. I heard recently that his business partner in his new venture fired him because he literally thinks and says to other people, tells other people that he is a godlike figure and that everyone else is in his reality. And he just kept cheating on his girlfriend and stealing from people because he's like, listen, I'm the center of this. I'm entitled to this. If you withhold this from me, you're actually being selfish because being around me is a gift in itself. He used to tell people these things. And so everybody he talked to was like, holy cow, I can't be around this guy. He's insane. He thinks he's God.
Yeah, narcissists tend to turn off people. They come across as weird, but it takes time. Many narcissists are great actors. They have thespian skills. They are able to emulate and imitate other people's emotions, and they tend to fit in. So they are under camouflage. It's exactly like in nature. The many predators are, disguise themselves, camouflage themselves. The mimetic skills of narcissists are formidable. And so this is precisely the source of the danger, that you can't, just by looking at someone or being around someone, you can't tell that this person is a narcissist or a psychopath. It takes in-depth research, and it takes some knowledge and some skills to reach this conclusion.
And unfortunately, the people who get those knowledge and those skills usually get it the hard way, I would imagine.
Yep. Usually get it the hard way. They pay a dear price, and it's a never-ending price because many psychopathic narcissists are also stalkers. They never give up. They own you. Once they've been in an intimate relationship or a workplace relationship or any kind of relationship, they tend to regard you as their property, as an extension of themselves, as a mere artifact, an avatar, an icon of their possessions. They internalize and assimilate people around them. They tend to digest their environment, if you wish. And so they never let go, because letting go implies failure. Letting go implies defeat. Letting go implies imperfection. And the narcissist is perfect and brilliant and a godhead. So, once you get stuck with a narcissist or a psychopath, it's very rare, to be able to get rid of them.
That's really scary. I mean, how do you know so much about these conditions in the first place?
I am one. I've been twice diagnosed with narcissistic personality disorder, and I've been diagnosed with antisocial personality disorder, colloquially known as psychopathy, so I'm technically a psychopath, and I've been publicly diagnosed. There's a film about the process of diagnosing me, and it's called I, Psychopath. So I am a kind of narcissist, a subspecies of narcissist, a variant of narcissist known as psychopathic narcissist. And that's the worst type because it's a combo, a double whammy, narcissist and psychopath. I know everything there is to know about these people, not only because I am one, which provides me with a highly unique vantage point, of course, but also because I've spent the last 16 years corresponding with narcissists, their family members, colleagues, neighbors, and so on. I've amassed a vast database. I have tens of thousands of people in my various mailing lists and social media sites and networks. So after 16 years, I feel that I can speak with a modicum of authority on many of the issues which have to do with narcissists and psychopaths. Regrettably, the psychiatric profession and psychologists and therapists are way behind the curve. The serious study of narcissism started, I would say, a mere 6 or 7 years ago.
Really?
And when I erupted on the scene, so to speak, in 1995, there has been one website dedicated to narcissism, and there has been one book dedicated to narcissism, Alexander Lowen's book published in 1974. That was it. There was nothing there. I even had to come up with a language to describe the disorder because there was absolutely nothing there. Narcissism was, the concept of narcissism was suggested as early as 1915, 1916. That's like 100 years ago, by Sigmund Freud, the father of psychoanalysis, in his famous essay on narcissism. And yet it was a neglected, obscure topic. Today, when our culture, civilization, and society is becoming more and more narcissistic, when narcissistic traits and behaviors are rewarded rather than punished, when school children and students are encouraged to display narcissism and to conceive of themselves as omniscient and omnipotent, you can do anything if you just put your mind to it. When people confuse self-esteem and self-confidence with narcissism, today when narcissism is an epidemic, the psychiatric and profession is beginning to pay attention. But it may be way too late because narcissism has become an embedded feature in our environment, in our social environment, economic environment.
Now, when you were, is this something you're born with or is this something you develop?
Well, hard to tell. It's clearly related to childhood abuse and trauma. Even the term abuse, childhood abuse, is not a malevolent, monolithic concept. Because, for instance, pampering a child, doting on a child, spoiling a child, putting a child on a pedestal, developing high expectations with regards to the child, these are all forms of abuse because they breach and violate the child's nascent personality, the child's boundaries. So any treatment of a child as an instrument, as a tool of gratification, as an object, any objectification of the child, is a form of abuse. You can objectify a child by beating the child or by sexually molesting the child, but you can also objectify the child by making the child the channel and tool for fulfilling your own dreams and expectations.
So like parents that have too high expectations, and let me just clarify this to see if I'm hearing you correctly. So
Sure.
if I have parents that put a ton of pressure on me, you know, like you better be a doctor, you're a failure, or look at all your brothers and sisters, that person could turn into a narcissist because the expectations for the parents.
Yes, because what are the parents saying? What's the actual message? The actual message is, I want a doctor's son. I want a son who is an engineer. I want it. I take pride in it. It's my wish, my dream, my expectation, and you are here to fulfill it. You are an instrument. You are a mere object. You will do what I tell you to do, or I will withhold my love and consider you a failure. So that's
there's
definitely
half
a
of
form
Wall
of
Street.
abuse.
Yeah, that's half of Wall Street and probably any high-performing career right there. You know, you get those crazy parents.
I agree.
What are some early signs of this? You know, for example, looking back 2020 hindsight, I assume you got diagnosed a few years ago. Can you look back into your teen years or even your childhood and go, this is kind of where I started exhibiting these characteristics of narcissism and psychopathy?
Well, in my case, I think it was around the age of 7 or 8. I was sent to a psychologist, and they found out that I have a 185 IQ, which is pretty high.
Yeah, like genius level's like 160 or something. You probably know this, right? 140 or 160, right?
Yeah, 140 and above is considered genius. Einstein had 160 and so on. So I was diagnosed with 185, and of course this made waves in Israel at the time. Israel was a very small country with 2 million inhabitants.
Many geniuses.
And there's this ethos of the Jewish genius and so on, and so it made waves. I became a media celebrity, especially in my hometown. I was a mere 8 years old. I was sent to study at the university at the age of 9.
Oh my God.
And so I lost my peer group, and I became, in my own eyes, omniscient, all-knowing, and infallible. I could not make mistakes. I did not make mistakes. And even when I made mistakes, they were intentional. I was testing people. These are the narratives and the stories that I was telling myself. Then I began to deceive people in a variety of ways. I took to petty criminal activities like stealing money from cash registers and stuff like that, probably owing to the pressure and the tension. So you see, being put on a pedestal is equally harmful. And then I endured a long period of physical and mental abuse, frequent life-endangering beatings for many years, and psychological humiliation. My mother is, in all probability, a narcissist, and so she became jealous. She became envious of my success, and I became her competitor. The battle, was between unequal forces. I was at her mercy, and she made clear that this is the case. And so in my case, there was a combination of first being put on a pedestal and then being kicked off the pedestal, and then being traumatically abused for many, many years until late adolescence. I try to compensate for these life circumstances by pretending that I am all-powerful, that there is nothing I cannot achieve, that I'm never wrong, that I can sway and manipulate people to my heart's content, that all people around me, I told myself that everyone around me was an idiot, and that my 185 make me a member of a future species of humanity. Like, I'm not really human anymore.
Right, you're the next level of human evolution, and everyone else
next level of human evolution.
Hasn't caught up to
I
you
began
yet,
to think of myself in terms of an automaton, a robot, a machine. And so I try to optimize and maximize. Obviously, throughout this process, I had to suppress all my emotions, because
Right.
had I allowed myself to feel, I would have probably cut my wrists and be done with it. So I couldn't allow myself to feel, and I couldn't allow myself to empathize, because to empathize with someone is to feel for that someone. So you see the chain of events and traits and behaviors that leads to narcissism, at least in my case. But my case is pretty typical.
Yeah, that sounds really unusual, but I guess it is typical for narcissists. So let me ask you this: when you interact with people now, still having these disorders, like for example, when we're talking here. Earlier, you said, I'll leave I just told you how we pre-record the show and how the show flow goes. And you said, well, yeah, you have more experience than this with me. Is there sort of an automatic aspect to your interactions where you're like, well, I have to say things like that, even though at some level, or maybe even a very surface level, you think that you're smarter than everybody else. So you kind of just have to put on social graces, because otherwise everybody's like, man, that Sam guy's a real dick.
The bulk of my behaviors and the bulk of my responses and reactions and interactions are, at this stage of life, I'm 53 years old, these are fully automated. I've learned in life that in order to manipulate people more effectively, in order to extract narcissistic supply, which is the narcissist drug, narcissists are in constant need of consuming attention, adulation, admiration, or of being feared and being notorious, whatever, but being at the center of attention. So I've learned that in order to extract my narcissistic supply and so on, I have to pretend. And pretension became a second nature. And I have leveraged and I have deployed my intelligence. I've used it for the task of analyzing people, their emotions, their body language, what they expect to hear, and their trigger points and their buttons. I have learned how to push their buttons, for better and for worse. So about 90% of everything I do, everything I say, all my behaviors, and so on are now automatic. They are not. I don't have to think about them.
That makes a lot of sense. So you really actually. It's like that. Have you ever seen that movie American Psycho?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like where he just says there's just no one home. Right?
Yeah.
It's like you're in there somewhere. But that's really it.
Hey man, it's Jordan. You've been listening to the show for a while now, right? And you've probably thought about what it would be like to take our week-long boot camp. Maybe it sounds silly or weird or downright crazy. Or maybe you think you don't really need a structured program to become a better man. Either way, I get it. Taking charge of your life is a big deal. It doesn't feel easy, and it doesn't feel fun until you actually do it. And then, well, just listen to a few of our graduates.
AJ and Jordan changed my life. I'm glad they did.
Dude, I'm way happier now than I've ever been.
I'm now engaged to the girl of my dreams, and I'm headed off to medical school in the fall.
Those were all real quotes from some of the guys that we've helped transform. I want you to be one of those guys. And deep down, I think you are one of those guys. Because the way I see it, the art of charm is not about becoming the new you. It's about becoming the real you. And I know who he is. Do you? Come find out at theartofcharm.com.
Now, there are many, many other small signs. I don't know if we have the time, but I can give you a very, telegraphic list if we have the time.
That would be great. Yeah, if a couple minutes
Okay.
of rundown of just like little things people can watch out for would be great.
Right. So narcissists are hypervigilant and hypersensitive. In other words, they pick up fights. They feel constantly slighted, injured, insulted. They rant incessantly. The weaker, and the sick, and the younger, and animals, impatiently and cruelly. They express negative, aggressive emotions towards the weak, the poor, the needy, the sentimental, the disabled. They blame these people for their misfortune. They say, it could have been different had they only chosen not to be weak, or not to be poor, or not to be needy. The next thing is narcissists and psychopaths are very eager. They push you to make decisions sometimes on a first date. I have heard of cases where narcissists and psychopaths proposed on the first date.
Oh, wow.
So they push you to make decisions, important decisions, life-critical decisions, like getting married or becoming a girlfriend or having children. So they cast you in the role of an idealized source of narcissistic supply. They press you for exclusivity. They want instant intimacy. They almost rape you, in the emotional sense. And they act jealous when you as much as cast a glance at someone else. So all these are normal after 10 dates or 10 months.
Right.
But if they happen on the first or second date, that is a warning sign. That's red alert. Be careful. Another very important sign is if the person you're dating doesn't respect your boundaries and privacy. If he ignores your wishes, for instance, he chooses from the menu for you. He tells you what to eat and what to drink. He disrespects your boundaries by treating you as an object or instrument of gratification. For instance, he materializes on your doorstep, unexpected, or he calls you often after midnight. Or he goes through your personal belongings while waiting for you to get ready. Or he texts you or he phones you multiply and incessantly and insists to know where you are or where you have been or what are you doing and so on. So he owns you. You become his property, his possession. And you, from that moment, you have no will of your own. That is an extremely alarming warning sign. Does he control the situation? Is he compulsive? Does he insist to ride in his car? Does he hold on to the car keys, the money, the theater tickets, the bag, your bag? Does he disapprove if you go away for too long? For instance, when you go to the powder room, come back. Where have you been? What took you so long? Does he interrogate you all the time? Have you done this? Have you been this? Like you owe him a report. You are his employee or whatever. Does he make remarks or comments or jokes at your expense? Does he hint that in the future you may need his permission to do things, even innocuous things like meeting a friend or visiting your family? Does he insist on a dress code? He tells you, we're going to this restaurant and you should dress this way. I don't like what you're wearing. So all these things, the narcissist objectifies you. He is patronizing. He's condescending. And don't fall for the easy compliments. For instance, if a narcissist tells you, the best thing that ever happened in my life, he might as easily turn around on a dime and tell you, you're the worst thing that ever happened in my life. That means these cycles of idealization and then devaluation are very indicative of a narcissistic personality. Narcissists put you on a pedestal, then they knock you down, and the next thing they do is put you on a pedestal again, depending, if they have alternative sources of supply at the moment. But they never see you realistically. They idealize you. You don't exist at all.
Right.
They treat you as a fantasy.
Right.
And you should conform to the fantasy. And if you fail to conform to the fantasy, you're evil. So the devaluation phase is when you fail to live up to the idealized and fantastic expectations of the narcissist.
Which would be theoretically impossible anyway.
Which is always impossible. The narcissist inhabits a neverland. So this is also very important to notice if the narcissist talks about you in a way that reflects his inner fantasy rather than your reality, who you are really. He doesn't see you. If he doesn't see you. These are, telltale signs. There are many more, but I think that's a sufficient list at this stage.
That's amazing. That's really interesting. And so if we see these, what's the best thing to do? Just cut and run?
Cut and run.
Yeah.
It's as simple as that. I could summarize. I've written 10 books about personality disorders.
Right, in the end.
A few of them are bestsellers.
In the last chapter is always get the hell out of there before it's too late.
I could have condensed all of them into a single sheet of paper had people been willing to pay the price, but they're not. They want 680 pages. I could have condensed all 680 pages into a single 2-word phrase: no contact. That's all. You see these things, you feel awry, you feel awkward, you feel something's wrong, walk away. It doesn't pay to stay around until you label the person, until you figure things out. Just walk away. If you're already involved in a relationship like that, walk away. If you have children with that person, if it's your ex or something, create a firewall between you and him. Use professionals like accountants and lawyers. Walk away. Do not maintain contact. Do not accept gifts. Do not answer the phone. Make your boundaries clear and unequivocal. Do not be aggressive, but be firm. Make clear that you want no further contact. No contact. Every contact is interpreted by the narcissist as a vulnerability, as a chink in your armor. The narcissist will invade you. He is much more adept at manipulating you than you are at defending yourself. He manipulates for a living. His life is manipulation. You defend yourself intermittently, only when needed. So he has the advantage over you. He's a pro. You're an amateur. Don't let him in any shape, way, or form. Not via audio, not via video, not physically, not with gifts, not with letters, not with dinners, not with flowers, not with confessions, not with requests, not with bequests, not with anything. Just walk away. Disconnect, delete this chapter in your life. You are in danger. Narcissists and psychopaths, the diagnosis of psychopathic narcissists is the most common among murderers, among batterers, in domestic violence cases, and among serial killers. Do not think that escalation is impossible. Don't think that you know your ex or you know your escalation is in the cards.
Right, because people go, oh, you know what? No, I know him. He has that, but he's not dangerous. He would never do that, right? And you're saying that's wrong.
That's wrong. They are wrong. They are wrong. None of them lives to tell. So it's, narcissists are paranoid. Narcissists rage, reservoirs of aggression and violence and rage, pent up, just waiting to erupt. They are walking, talking volcanoes. They may not harm you physically, so they'll harm you some other way. They'll steal from you. They will impoverish you. They will take away your children. They will stalk you. They will puncture your tires. They will invade your home. There will be a price to pay for staying in touch. So in many cases, just declaring one's boundaries, making them clear, demarcating them, and being firm, yet not aggressive, is maybe enough, especially if the narcissist or psychopath have moved on and they found an alternative source of supply. But in some cases, you would need to involve the courts, the police, and so on, orders, peace bonds, you name it. It all depends on this particular circumstances. Remember that once the narcissist's possession, always the narcissist's possession. You are in his books. You are a potential source of narcissistic supply. Even your pain, even your anger, even your protestations, even your pleas, even your begging are sources of supply. If the narcissist cannot obtain positive supply, being adulated and admired, then the narcissist, he accepts negative supply, like being feared or being notorious. All the narcissist wants to be is at the center of attention, and all the psychopath wants is tangible benefits: sex, money, power, access, and so on. The psychopathic narcissist wants all of these things put together.
Wow.
So the mere act of being in touch conveys to the narcissist, she is still mine. She is still under my spell. I am still in control. She can still be manipulated. She has to beg me. I am still omnipotent. She pleads with me. I am powerful. She asks me for things, then I'm in position of being omniscient, all-knowing, etc., etc. You are feeding his grandiosity by being in contact with him.
Now, these are typically things that, and that's terrifying, first of all, but these are typically things that are sort of attributed to masculine characteristics, right? Stalking, home invasions. But the majority of the audience here being men, a lot of guys are probably going, yeah, but I'm not scared of some girl like stalking me, whatever, what's she going to do? But this obviously affects women as well as men. And that's sort of the danger is I think a lot of guys go, I can handle it. She's a girl. Meanwhile, she's, waiting to pounce on you in your living room.
First of all, there's a series of personality disorders which are the equivalents of narcissism and psychopathy, and which are highly typical of women. For instance, the infamous borderline personality disorder. These are women. These are people, most of them women, who are volatile, rageful, vengeful, clinging, codependent, and utterly dangerous. We have histrionic personality disorder. Again, the majority are women who use and abuse their sex appeal and sexuality to play with people's, to attract men, to reaffirm their self-confidence and self-esteem. They are sexually promiscuous, so they can cause a lot of pain. They are not like narcissists. They do have empathy and they do have emotions, but they are compulsive. They can't control their sexual conduct. So if you're married to someone like that, that will cause you enormous pain because you will be involved in multiple affairs and so on. So women bring with them the baggage which men, there are personality disorders which are more typical of men and others which are more typical of women. Still, 25% of all narcissists are women. And an unknown percentage of psychopaths are women, maybe 10 to 15%. There are women psychopaths and there are women narcissists. And the worst part is, here's the bad news. Most women with borderline personality disorder also have narcissistic personality disorder. They are comorbid. These two disorders usually go together, hand in hand. So if you fall for a woman who is borderline and probably narcissistic, you're in deep trouble. I would be afraid of this combination even more than I'm afraid of a narcissist. So the lessons I'm imparting now are universal. They are not universal, but gender neutral.
Right, and that's important because I don't want people to think, that wouldn't happen to me because I'm a dude, or that's not something I'm worried about because I'm a tough guy. And because what we're saying is you can be a tough guy. She's going to find the weak point, get close to you, and then twist the knife.
Yes. These people, narcissists, psychopaths, borderlines, and so on, don't twist the knife, except there's a minority of sadists. So they twist the knife because they enjoy looking at you squirm. They enjoy watching you, in pain and so on. But that's a negligible minority. The vast majority of narcissists, psychopaths, and borderlines twist the knife because you do not conform to their fantasy. I would say this is the main problem. The main issue. You do not conform to the narcissist fantasy as an idealized source of supply. You don't adulate him enough. You don't admire him enough. You are not perfect enough. You are not brilliant enough. You are not blonde enough, or I don't know what. You are not enough. You don't conform to the psychopath's fantasy because you don't allow him access to benefits. You don't allow him access to sex, to money, to power, to your children, to your possessions, to your family, or whatever. So with the psychopaths, it's an issue of access. With a narcissist, it's an issue of grandiose fantasy. And with a borderline, it's an issue of possession. Borderlines are clinging, they're codependent, they are afraid, they have enormous abandonment anxiety. But in all three cases, they twist the knife only when they are frustrated. So it's frustration, aggression. They become aggressive when they're frustrated. And yes, they will find the chink in your armor. There isn't, the person is not born who is invulnerable. And they will find your Achilles heel, and they will inflict damage on you. And it is a gender-neutral advice. And you should be careful, whether you're a man or a woman.
Thank you so much. Sam Vaknin, author of Malignant Self-Love, Narcissism Revisited. We'll put a link to the book in the show notes and, of course, on the podcast bookshelf that you can find at theartofcharmpodcast.com/bookshelf. That was a great show. I am speechless. I mean, that's both terrifying and fascinating. So good luck with those nightmares, everybody.
Some people think the Art of Charm boot camps are about picking up girls. And honestly, they are.
1 week with us, and you'll be rocking out in that department. I promise.
But as a guy, I know how important it is to be charismatic, and not just with girls. And that's why company The Art of Charm. That special something that gets you results wherever you go. And trust me, the results are real. Every day I get new emails from the guys who graduated from our boot camp.
And what I read is amazing.
Just weeks after graduating, they land a promotion.
They form a new wolf pack.
They have a new life.
It's not an accident.
Find out why at theartofcharm.com.
Well, you raised an interesting issue because I don't think I'm in there somewhere. Actually, my entire work since the 1990s has revolved around the claim or around the theorem, the postulate that narcissists do not exist. That where a person should be, there is a void. That narcissists at a very early age have generated or created a false self. It's a concoction. It's a piece of fiction. It's a confabulation, which is intended to compensate for the narcissist's real life pain and hurt and inferiority. So remember that narcissists start off as abused children. So narcissism is a reaction to abuse. And the reaction is, I will generate this false self. This false self is all-powerful and all-knowing and therefore not amenable to being hurt, not amenable to being manipulated, not subject to pain. Gradually, the false self takes over because the false self is a highly successful construct usually. It allows the narcissist to survive somehow, painlessly. And, it protects the narcissist. And sometimes the false self garners real-life results, real-life outcomes. Many chief executive officers, presidents of the United States, politicians, people in show business and the media and so on, are actually putting forth their false self. It is their false self that got them elected. It is their false self that made them famous. So the false self becomes a very useful thing and gradually takes over and eliminates the true self, eliminates the person that used to be there. So when you look at a narcissist, especially in therapy, you discover an ossified, fossilized true self, a childlike condition. You discover the narcissist at 4 years of age or 5 years of age, hiding somewhere in the deepest recesses of the narcissist psyche, while the narcissist puts forward the false self and only the false self. So I think what happens with the narcissist is an increasing hollowing out of his inner landscape. He becomes more and more hollow, empty, a vacuum, a void. And this frightens people. People who get close to the narcissist, it's frightening.
Yeah, because think of it like this. It really is like American Psycho, where there's just nobody home. If you become someone's best friend, they're open and up to you, they're vulnerable, and you're literally just playing a role. You're acting based on their cues. They get vulnerable. You share a vulnerability story that may or may not be true, but you're not feeling it. You're doing it as an automatic reaction because it's going to yield the result that you're looking for.
Yeah, true.
So
I call myself an optimizing machine.
Yeah. And so this you're married, which is also probably going to surprise a little bit of the audience because people are going, well, good luck with relationships, but you're married. Right now you're married.
My second marriage, yes.
Okay. How long have you been married?
This round, more than 10 years. Previous round, 8 years. So these are long-term, pretty stable relationships, relatively,
Right. Your marriages have lasted longer than a lot of people, than most people's probably, at least in the United States, that don't have disorders of any kind.
That's true. It depends, of course, on mate selection. Narcissists and psychopaths home in. They zero in on highly specific profiles of mates. So in my case, my current wife, Lydia, who is also my business partner, and so we are, heavily intermeshed in every possible way.
Right.
My current wife has grown up in a family of narcissists and psychopaths. She has been subjected to abuse on multiple levels, anything from physical abuse to financial abuse. And she has learned how to manipulate her environment full with narcissists and psychopaths. She has learned to become a narcissist handler, or what I call inverted narcissist. So she's a perfect fit. She knows how to handle narcissists. She knows how to manipulate them, how to manage them, how to protect herself and defend herself from their vicissitudes and abuse and so on. So that's her comfort zone.
Right.
That's her natural habitat.
Exactly. She grew up in that. She wouldn't even be able to date somebody who doesn't have that, probably.
She would, but then it's like switching from a film in color to a black and white.
Right.
or from a talkie to a silent film.
Right. So there would be a level of input that's no longer present. And despite that maybe being possibly healthier in an absolute sense, it wouldn't continue to keep her interest because it would be outside her comfort zone.
There is a good reason, based on recent discoveries in neurology and so on. There's good reason to brain has been plastically conditioned and remolded by the presence of narcissists and psychopaths in early childhood. So that, for instance, she is addicted to adrenaline. She needs the ups and downs, the unpredictability, even the abuse to some extent. She needs the vicissitudes. Yes, as I said, she needs this. I don't think she can survive with someone whose life is routine and, in her eyes, dull and boring. She needs this, and she reads the cues. She reads social cues emitted by narcissists and psychopaths far better than she can read the cues and the body language of so-called normal or healthy people. So she is perfectly adapted. It's like a niche adaptation. She is perfectly adapted. It's like, key and lock. Right.
Now, you said to some degree she needs the abuse. Would you say that you abuse your wife?
Well, of course, it goes without saying. If I'm a narcissist or a psychopath, which I am, I abuse as automatically and as unthinkingly as you breathe. It's a communication mode as far as I'm concerned. It's a way of exploring the world and interacting with it. It's a way of making sure of favorable outcomes. And it's very important to understand that abuse is a language. It's people express emotions, suppressed and otherwise, via abuse. There is no psychodynamic distinction in principle between treating someone nicely and treating someone horribly. They are both ways of communicating messages and ascertaining that a certain outcome should happen. So yes, abuse for me is my language.
Interesting. All right. And when you were a kid, did you things you hear about psychopaths as well are like they torture animals and stuff like that. I mean, is that something that you had as a child?
No, I didn't torture animals. I wasn't the type who sticks pins in cockroaches and what have you, or burns the tails of cats or the whole cat. But I tortured human beings. I had an ability to how to put it, to psychologically torment and bring people to the brink of suicide or massive trauma. One of my victims as a child, I was 9 years old. One of my victims ended up in a mental asylum for prolonged periods of time and so on. So I did torture, but my targets were people, and my methodology was psychological rather than physical. And I thought that inflicting on someone a nightmare is a much more effective way than pinning a cockroach with a pin.
Sure. And to what purpose do you create that pain in other people?
It supported my sense of omnipotence, the feeling that I'm all powerful or godlike. So it's a narcissistic behavior because it supports one of the main tenets of the narcissist's grandiosity.
So it's about controlling other people's thought patterns and reactions to you, essentially.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
So it's about controlling other people's thought patterns or reactions to you, essentially.
It's about the ability to wield such influence, control, and manipulative force as to make the other person my asset.
Right.
As to, that's one thing. And the second thing is, of course, the pleasure of it. Many psychopaths and psychopathic narcissists are also sadistic to varying extents. Not all of them are totally sadistic, like serial killers or what have you. But almost all of them, I would say that all of them, have this sadistic streak where they derive pleasure and they consider even funny, inflicting pain on other people. Some of them do it in a utilitarian way. They inflict pain in order to ensure that people behave the way they want them to behave or to derive benefits, such as money or power. And others do it just for the fun of it, because it's a favorable pastime. I did it mostly because it gave me a sense of omnipotence, the ability to annex another person, the ability to expropriate another person and make him mine, mind control. But also, I must admit that there was this undertone, overtone of pleasure.
Interesting. So you derived actual pleasure from it, even in a non-utilitarian way.
Yes, in my case, yes.
Now,
I find it pleasurable to inflict pain on people, but not of the physical kind. I'm not a physical sadist. Pain, when I say pain, I mean psychological pain, discomfort, extreme discomfort, and so on. I do it in socially, intelligently, I do it by socially conforming. In other words, I do it in socially acceptable ways. So, for instance, I would try to expose the truth, knowing full well that it will cause pain and discomfort to people. But no one can tell me, what are you doing? What you're doing is wrong. Exposing the truth is wrong. You can't say that. So whatever I do is socially acceptable and socially condoned. But I do it not because I'm particularly moralistic or ethical. I do it because I know that it will cause pain, embarrassment, and discomfort.
Right. Wow. Okay. And so this is essentially at the end of the day, we try to teach people how to become better and or even be better in dating. So what if we meet somebody? How can we spot these things early on in people that we meet, men and women alike, in our dating partners? Are there telltale signs that we should look for? I mean, in a way, like explaining it now, it almost seems like it's got to be just so obvious. But I've met narcissists before, and like you said, they are brilliant actors. So they're not going to come out and be like you, being like, hey, you know what? I like to abuse people. I get pleasure from it. They come out and they go, hey, man, nice to meet you. Is there anything I can do for you? I'm your neighbor down the street. Just let me know if you need a hand, with anything. I mean, they know exactly how to generate trust, and then they later on exploit that.
Before I go into specific telltale signs, there are, I must say that you're right. Narcissists and psychopaths are subtle. They are actors, but not only actors. They act in subterfuge. It's very difficult to tell them apart because they are wonderful imitations of real, normal, healthy human beings, and they are not. I told you in our preparatory conversation, I told you that I regard narcissists and psychopaths as a form of artificial intelligence, kind of aliens.
Right.
The closest we have to extraterrestrials are narcissists and psychopaths. And why is that? Because they lack the basic fundamentals of being human. They have no empathy. Their emotions are so suppressed that they are not in touch with them anymore. So if you take away emotions and you take away empathy, what's left? Nothing. Not a human being, definitely.
Right, just robotic parts.
Robotic machinery.
Robotic.
I mean, it's imaginable. It's totally imaginable, and probably will happen that in 50 years' time, we're going to have robots who do not have empathy, but can imitate it, do not have emotions, but can perfectly imitate emotions, and can pass off as human beings, androids,
Right. And they'll more or less
narcissists and psychopaths are among us
like
in this sense. These robots are here.
Right. They just happen to be born instead of manufactured in Japan.
They happen to be manufactured in the womb. I prefer to put it this way.
Yeah.
The manufacturing process is still biological and organic. But that's it.
Wow.
Everything else sets them apart. And now, they are such sophisticated machinations. They are such sophisticated gadgets, if you wish, that it's difficult at first sight to tell them apart. And there are two reasons. One, narcissistic and psychopathic traits emerge in clear and full view only in times of crisis. So you're going to see the narcissist as a narcissist, and you're going to see psychopathic traits and behaviors only when there's a crisis of some kind.
Right.
For instance, the narcissist loses his sources of supply, so he's not getting supply anymore. For instance, you become sick and you need the narcissist's help and empathy. For instance, you ask the narcissist for a favor, etc. So in times of push comes to shove, in times of crisis, it is then that the narcissist shows its true colors, and the psychopath. This is point number one. Point number two, each narcissistic behavior taken separately is common among non-narcissists. If you take each of the behaviors that typify and characterize a narcissist, the normal reaction is to say, but wait a minute, this behavior, this trait, my neighbor has it, my mother has it, my friend has it, my husband has it. And so each trait and behavior separately do not designate the person as, but it is the cluster. You need to observe a cluster of behaviors, a cluster of traits for you to say, wait a minute, there's something wrong with this guy or with this girl, Something's wrong with them because they are not only arrogant, which my father is. They are not only exploitative, which my mother is. They are not only this, which my brother is, but they are all these things put together. So narcissism and psychopathy are cluster disorders.
Right.
Disorders that you need to see the totality in order to discern that something's wrong.
You guys must have amazing holiday parties with all that going around in the house.
Yeah. And now let me try to be helpful because there are some things you can. First of all, psychopaths and narcissists are too good to be true. They immediately home in on you. They focus their attention. You become the center of the world. They are relentlessly charming. They concentrate on, they make you feel like you are the one and only, like you are unique, like you've never felt before. On the other hand, at the same time, they subtly inject an endless list of their accomplishments, skills, talents, brilliance, acuity, good fortune, this and that, So, at the same time, they make you feel special, and they tell you that you are special because they are special and they've chosen you.
Ah, interesting.
The second thing is information asymmetry. The narcissist, and I'm talking about a first meeting, a first date, yeah? So narcissists and psychopaths immediately flood you with information. Most of it disinformation, but never mind. They immediately flood you with information. They open the gates. They are inordinately sincere, honest, open, and they tell you everything you want to know and many things you don't want to know, and so on. So there's something takes you aback because you don't need, there's no process. It's like reaching the goal before you've gone through any process of getting to know each other. I would say that the third sign is that whenever the narcissist or the psychopath does something, acts in a way which is considered normal or healthy, you can see the effort. The narcissist behavior is not effortless, but you can see the investment of effort. So if the narcissist wants to be polite to a waiter or a waitress, or wants to be nice to a taxi driver, or wants to express an interest in one of your colleagues, and whatever. So these normal behaviors, totally normal behaviors, which come naturally to normal, healthy people, you can see the effort that the narcissist has to invest in doing these things. On the other hand, behaviors which are considered abnormal, unhealthy, or uncommon come to the narcissist effortlessly, completely effortlessly. So if the narcissist believes that he is not being served fast enough, or that he is not getting the attention and respect that he deserves, he will erupt in a narcissistic rage, display of narcissistic rage. And that will come to him naturally, effortlessly, and immediately. You can see that he doesn't need to invest any effort in raging, because rage is common to narcissists. It's a common narcissistic trait and behavior. So this distinction between normal behaviors which come with an effort on the part of the narcissist and abnormal behaviors which come to the narcissist completely naturally and effortlessly. Another thing is alloplastic defenses. That's the narcissist blames everyone and everything for every failure, defeat, or mistake that he makes.
Of course.
It's never his fault.
Right.
Never, ever his fault. The world at large is responsible directly for everything that's wrong in his life or in his conduct or in his accomplishments, or in how the evening went, or whatever. We call this an external locus of control. He believes that his life is ruled from the outside. And he describes his life.
That's interesting because you just said that earlier that a narcissist believes they're godlike and the center of everything, and yet they have an external locus of control.
For everything that's right.
Oh, I see. So everything that's right created by them, everything that's wrong created by an external locus.
Exactly.
Interesting.
And so everything that's right is attributable to them. They're responsible for it. Everything that's wrong is not the narcissist's fault. It's because people are stupid, or they are malicious, or they are jealous, or they are incompetent, or whatever. So he describes his life. Narcissists describe their life. The narcissist describes his life as the accretion, the accumulation, the sedimentation of injustice, of discrimination, of conspiracy, of not being treated fairly. That's a very important sign.
Thank you so much, Sam. Sam Vaknin, show notes available on the website for the book and the documentary where he actually describes how he tortured that guy into the mental hospital.
Perhaps play a little game called Just a Tip, just for a second, just to see how it feels.
Hey, this is Jordan Harbinger, host of the Art of Charm podcast, the #1 dating and relationship advice podcast in iTunes.
I'm Emily Morse, host of the Sex with Emily podcast, the #1 sex and relationship podcast on iTunes and at sexwithemily.com. And this is Just the Tip.
You know, at the Art of Charm, we teach a lot about body language and reading people, but what people don't or maybe don't know is that you can still do this even during sex.
Exactly. In fact, men have to pay attention to what women want during sex. It's crucial because all you have to do is pay attention. Men are asking me all these questions. Did she have an orgasm? Is she really turned on? Well, just look at her. Is she breathing? Does her breathing get more intense? Does her face flush? Does she, is she rapidly puffing? Does a woman start writhing? How is her body moving? I mean, pay attention. A lot of times guys are in their own head. How am I doing? How am I feeling? But if you really open your eyes and you see she's writhing, she's pulling on the sheets, her breath is quickening, her cheeks are flushed, I think you're doing the right thing. Mm-hmm. Keep doing that.
She's not
Pay attention to her body language. Yeah, if she's like texting her BFF, you're probably not doing the right thing.
If you guys want to learn more from the Art of Charm about dating, relationships, and even networking for business, visit us at theartofcharmpodcast.com or check us out on iTunes and follow me on Twitter at The Art of Charm.
And check out the Sex with Emily podcast at sexwithemily.com and on iTunes if you want to have the best sex of your life, that is. Also, follow me on Twitter at sexwithemily.
All right, guys, show feedback and guest suggestions can go to jordanh@theartofcharm.com. If you know someone who's a good fit for the show, definitely want that intro. You can also add me, Jordan Harbinger, on Facebook and follow us on Twitter at The Art of Charm. If you're new to the show but you want to know more about what we teach here at The Art of Charm, listen to the Toolbox. Again, theartofcharmpodcast.com/toolbox. That's where you get the fundamentals of dating and attraction, body language, eye contact, vocal tonality, all those fundamentals that are very, very crucial to your success socially and romantically. Make sure to stay up to date with everything going on here and get some killer-free ebooks as well as drills and exercises that'll help you become more charismatic and confident by signing up for the newsletter at theartofcharm.com. Bootcamp details at theartofcharm.com as well. And don't forget, military guys, we give you a hefty discount, 10% off your program here. 888-413-7177. If you guys buy something from a guest on the show, please do it through the podcast website to help support the show. If you can't find something, please email us and we'll hook it up. No problem. You guys can help us out as well. Subscribe within iTunes, give us a 5-star rating, and write something nice. We will love you forever. See, when you write us a review, it not only makes us feel proud, but it helps keep us up in the ranks of iTunes so other people who can use this information can find this show more easily and get credible advice that they need. It's also the best way to support the show other than purchasing products and training from us, so it really does help out a lot. Share our show on Reddit and other sites. That gets us a lot of much-needed new blood in the ranks as well. And post us on message boards and discuss us. This stuff really helps us out a lot, more than you guys might think. TheArtofCharmPodcast.com. Tell your friends, the greatest compliment you can give us is a referral to someone else. So have a great week, go out there and get social, and leave everything better than you found it.
Be sure to check out TheArtofCharmPodcast.com. TheArtofCharmPodcast.com for tips, courses, and archived podcasts.